warning. Thanks, Tim. Go for it. I'm going to start with some introductory remarks. All right, everyone, I think we are good to go, and we are live with ICRC. Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Schmidt. For those who don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of Mill Creek Alliance. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this 2021 edition of the State of Mill Creek, where we're going to share some info about all of Mill Creek's projects, but even more importantly, we're going to let you know about and celebrate the results of our 2020 water quality monitoring season. And I'm not going to steal their thunder, but we're extremely pleased with the results. I also want to take a moment to recognize our longtime friend, Mike Fremont, who is on the call tonight. Mike has been a role model and an inspiration to many of us on the call for decades. Oddly enough, Mike was one of the founders of both American Rivers and the predecessors of Mill Creek Alliance. And I currently find myself on the board of American Rivers, so there's been a real circle of life kind of relationship between Mike and American Rivers and the Mill Creek Alliance and the Mill Creek. Mike is just, again, an inspiration to all of us who, even having just celebrated his 99th birthday, is still out there paddling and running several times a week. I want to be Mike when I grow up. So thank you, Mike. Thank you for all you've done, and thank you for being with us tonight. This is actually a very special day for another reason. Without even getting into our water quality monitoring results, today is the third anniversary to the day of the formation of Mill Creek Alliance. It was 3 years ago this day when two groups met on the banks of Mill Creek, paddling up from either direction, and came together, signed the documents which officially formed the Mill Creek Alliance and formalized that arrangement and our vision to create one bigger, louder, stronger voice for the Mill Creek and all of our communities and neighborhoods. And I'm happy and proud to say that with your help and support, that vision is coming true. Today, Mill Creek Alliance is more vital and more active than ever before. As a matter of fact, Cincinnati Magazine just named us Nonprofit of the Year in 2 different categories, both for outdoor and environmental education and natural area and community cleanups. So our work and your work are being recognized, and there's just more bright days ahead of us. We have an amazing number of projects in the works, and if you give me a second, I will show a few slides, and we'll talk about some of that right now, as well, a little bit about what Mill Creek Alliance has going on before we get to the water quality monitoring program. So we'll go ahead and share the screen there. Hang on one moment. All right, go ahead and to the next slide. All right, before we get started tonight and discuss some of these other issues, I do want to thank the sponsors without whom our water quality monitoring program and many of our programs and projects would not be possible. We have many friends and sponsors. These are the ones who support or focused most strongly on the water quality monitoring program. Butler County, both the Water and Sewer Department and the Stormwater District are longtime friends and supporters, both financially as well as letting us use their water quality lab, which is just an enormous benefit, and without which we could not run the program. We also get a great deal of much appreciated support from our friends at the Metropolitan Sewer District of Greater Cincinnati, MSD, the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, the United States Environmental Protection Agency through their Environmental Justice Grant Program, the L&L Nippert Foundation, who have been longtime friends and supporters. Same is true of Duke Energy. And in addition, the University of Cincinnati, who so many professors and programs, including currently the DAP planning program, are supporting us in so many ways. So thank you so much to all of those sponsors. Next, Dan. All right, I think if you're on this call, you probably know us, but the Mill Creek Alliance champions the Mill Creek watershed, and our vision is a watershed that is a healthy ecosystem where people and communities can thrive, where the creek can be a place where people come to live, work, and play. And our work focuses on 3 large baskets, and those are restoration, education, and recreation. Next, please, Ann. You're gonna have to get rid of that screen.
There we go. People keep adding on. For some reason.
You can use the arrows at the bottom.
I don't know why it's stuck.
Sorry, folks, technical difficulties. 1 second. Sorry about that, folks. My apologies. So again, a little background about Mill Creek and the watershed. The stream has a number of issues caused by a variety of foci, but one of our larger problems currently is that the Mill Creek has become a very urban and suburban watershed, and there's a great deal of impervious surface in the watershed. This chart with an aerial map, gives you a sense of that. It shows that there's upwards of 70% of the surface area in the watershed is either impervious surface or has been developed and altered in other ways that increase runoff. So that really puts a lot of stressors on the stream with that volume of water that, as we've seen recently in heavy rainfalls, the amount of water that comes rushing into the stream makes it very flashy. It can contribute to sediment, to erosion, and a variety of other problems. Next. So in addition to the impervious surface, there are a variety of other issues that the stream still faces, despite the fact that the water quality has improved dramatically and the ecology of the stream has improved dramatically. We still do have issues that we're facing, and that's what our projects are designed to address. Some of those are the flooding that we just talked about. Of course, there are still CSOs and SSOs, combined sewer overflows. The folks at MSD, of course, are under a federal consent decree to address those and separate the combined sewer overflow over time. That is happening. They're working on phase 2 design projects now, and that is having a positive impact. I think, you know, perhaps we would all wish in an ideal world that it would happen faster, but that is having a very positive impact, and you'll see that later in some of the results. Of course, we have lots and lots of problems with honeysuckle, one of our arch enemies. We're going to go out and try to murder some honeysuckle at Solway Park this coming weekend, as a matter of fact. You know, the litter is one of the larger remaining problems in the stream. You know, the direct chemical pollution of the stream is largely a thing of the past. You know, companies aren't dumping, you know, liquid waste in the stream anymore, but there's still an enormous amount of just solid waste, everyday garbage and trash that winds up into the creek. Some of it's washed in through the stormwater system, some of it blows in, some of it gets tossed in, but that is something that we as a community need to address. In addition, there are still a number of sewer crossings / low-head dams, which are fish barriers. The water quality has improved and the ecology of the stream has improved. Fish populations, turtle populations, other critters are trying to move upstream and repopulate the system, but there are still a number of low-head dams that are an obstacle to that, and we are addressing that in a systematic fashion, taking those out. Next, Dan. So very quickly, because I know we want to get to the good stuff, but just a quick overview of some of our projects and programs. We do a lot of stream restoration work in a variety of ways. There's a couple of pictures here of some of our most recent restoration projects, the Reading Floodplain Bench Project, which we did in Reading just this past summer. In addition, the Sharonville Tributary Restoration Project out by the Mosteller Road, Kemper Road intersection area was again completed just this past year. We do lots of invasive species removal, a wide variety of cleanups, both with our friends at the Mill Creek Yacht Club and volunteer groups, including the picture you see here from with folks from Coca-Cola Consolidated. Next, Dan. In addition, we have a really large and active water quality and environmental education program. We provide, in normal non-COVID times, both in classroom and, more importantly, in the field experiences for young people from all over Greater Cincinnati. We have pivoted during these COVID times and adapted and created a number of virtual resources which we've made available to our schools, but we can't wait to get back out to the stream with the kids, hopefully this fall. And certainly not last but not least, with our friends at the Mill Creek Yacht Club, we do a large number of paddling trips, urban stream adventures, as well as cleanups. And we're also working very hard to extend the Mill Creek Greenway bike trail both to the north and to the south. So as you can see, very, very active group. We feel that the Mill Creek is really on the verge of spectacular things, and we'll be giving you lots of information on that in the days to come through various sources. But for now, let's get into the meat of the presentation and what you all came to hear, which is how is the stream itself doing and what are the results of our water quality monitoring program. And with that, just a second, I will hand it off to my colleague, Ann Lyons. Thanks for listening.
Take your mask off.
Well, welcome everybody. It's quite a crowd that came tonight, so it's really impressive. I'm the Water Quality Monitoring Coordinator. I started in 2019 in December, so this has been my first full year with the program. And I want to start by talking about why we actually do water quality monitoring here at the Mill Creek Alliance. And all these bullets are the reasons we do it. We want to document water quality trends. Ohio started a number of years ago with the total maximum daily load study, and when they did, they only came in and did testing and monitoring once every 10 years. We're providing annual data, high quality data that we can use to figure out what's going on and try to solve problems, which is our second point. We really want to identify any kind of water quality problems we have and work with responsible people to try to address those issues. We try to aid in watershed planning efforts. We try to evaluate the effectiveness of our restoration projects like the two that Dave just mentioned and see how much these projects are helping the Mill Creek. We want to proactively respond to any changes that come down to the pike from the federal government, specifically changes in the Clean Water Act. We want to educate people about the condition of Mill Creek because without people, we can't really solve problems. And of course, we want to highlight all of the wonderful economic and environmental benefits that we can achieve when we have good water quality. Next. This is a new map that we just had produced by OKI. I'm real proud of this map. It shows last year we monitored 58 different sites. Most of the sites, 1 through 54, actually got all of the monitoring every month except April and May when we had to close for COVID, and a couple of sites were added later in the season, 55 through 58, where we had less data. But it was pretty exciting. This program started in 2013 with 27 sites, and in 2020 we're up to 58 sites. And this year we are kind of excited because we took our first evaluation of our monitoring locations and we retired some sites and added some sites, and we still have 58. But the sites that we do have are really going to support Mill Creek's projects. Next. This gives you a peek into our lab. Our lab is located at the Upper Mill Creek Water Restoration Plant run by Butler County Water and Sewer. We're really thrilled that they let us use the lab. And these are some of our volunteers this past year that helped us perform all the testing on the water quality samples that our water samplers collected. The first person on the left is Rebecca Kay. She's our lab leader from Thomas More College. She has been absolutely invaluable. She's studying environmental studies and hopes to work for the FDA. The nitrate test was done by Jake Miller, who's now moved on and is working for EPA. Optical brighteners was run by one of our volunteers who took level 2 training. And then the other folks are all just our regular volunteers that helped us out through the season. Next slide. What parameters do we monitor and why? We're up to 8 parameters that we monitor. Total phosphorus and nitrates are 2 of the parameters that we care about a lot because they basically tell us how much sewage and nutrients are getting into our system. And they can come in the way of animal waste, fertilizer, pesticides, but however they get there, they change our water quality. As the nutrients go up, so do algae. Oxygen goes down and it affects aquatic life. So it's really important to get a handle on what's going on with nutrients. Some of you probably heard about nitrates. Nitrates cause the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, and we don't want Mill Creek to be one of those contributors. Conductivity helps us look at what's happening with road salt, heavy metals, and other things. Salts are another big thing that can affect water quality. It's kind of a baseline measurement, but oftentimes if you start seeing big spikes in conductivity, it means that you've got sewage. And we don't want sewage out there, especially when we want to return this to a recreational river. Turbidity, it's usually caused by habitat loss and development. Turbidity is kind of a twofer as you start getting a lot of soil particles in the river that absorbs heat and reduces oxygen for our aquatic life. So we like to see erosion kept down to a minimum. And quite frankly, who wants to canoe in a mud bath? I mean, we want our river to be clean and beautiful. pH is something that goes up whenever we start to see our shade go down. So we want to have healthy riparian zones and lots of shade And when we do that, it controls the pH. But as we remove all that shade, our pH goes up, and that can also negatively affect aquatic life. Now, to have a good recreation program, we need to keep our E. coli in check. We're a secondary body contact river, which Mike will talk about a little later, but we want to make sure that our E. coli's fall within the range so that we can continue to have this river for boating and fishing. Optical brighteners and in vivo chlorophyll were parameters we added more recently to the program. Optical brighteners are what makes your brights brighter and your lights lighter, but in any case, they're things that they put in detergent. And why we study them is because it enables us to separate sewage out as human waste versus animal waste. And by doing that, we can track down the source and try to do something about any kind of E. coli and coliform problems. In vivo chlorophyll A is a way that we take a look at algal biomass. And that algal biomass is being generated from the total phosphates in the nitrate. So it's our way of closing the loop and looking at the productivity of our system. And once we understand that, we can do something about it. Next slide. I always like to give the stats of our program because I think volunteers should know just how valuable they are. Now, this past year was COVID-19, so we had 2 months out of our 9 months that we couldn't monitor. So this data is based on 7 months worth of sampling. Our volunteer water samplers logged just under 500 hours, which is amazing. Our lab analysts, just under 275. So both of those is a lot of hours. And using a source that is used by federal programs, we calculated that out to volunteers contributed over 13,000 just for the water sampling and another 7,000 for the lab analyst work, which is over 20,000. So that's an amazing contribution that our volunteers make to this organization. So what's new? I always like to tell people what's new. This past year, one of the first things that I had the pleasure of doing was writing a federal QAP, and it was for our environmental justice program. But when that got approved, the Mill Creek Alliance actually has an approved federal QAP. A QAP is kind of a funny word, but it basically means Quality Assurance Project Plan, and it's basically a detailed plan of how you run your program and how you make sure that your program's meeting quality standards. So we're really excited about that. We had 2 Ohio EPA Level 2 water chemistry courses that we taught, and this training can be used to qualify people as OEPA Level 2 qualified data collectors. So that was exciting. 16 people got trained in that. We had 2 water sampler trainings just recently, and last year we had 2 also. This year we had 54 people trained, which was exciting. We've had 14 new people come forward to help us this year that weren't with us last year, so that was exciting. We had some donated equipment. Hawk donated a portable turbidimeter, which we really, really wanted, and so we were real happy about that. We got a new spectrophotometer. We also got a Hawk 10 set pipette filler. And that sounds like, well, what's that? But it's a really useful tool that helps us measure volumes, and it costs over $300. So we were very happy to get that. We changed out from Hannah pH field meters because they were all breaking, and we're really excited to have Oakton meters that we're going to be using this year to do our in situ pH measurements when the water samplers are out in the field. Another exciting thing that we did was, with the help of Rebecca, my new lab analyst and manager, we basically changed the way that we do total coliforms with the ColAlert 24 system. We were monitoring 100 ml samples up to this point, and most of our E. coli plates weren't readable. So by diluting them, we put 5 mLs of sample and 95 mLs of DI water together. We've got 80% readable plates, and so this is the first year you're going to get a really good picture of the E. coli situation in the Mill Creek, which is exciting. We implemented new quality assurance, quality control procedures. We changed our lab forms. We put all of our data in notebooks so everybody can use that data. We're changing this year. We use the collector app just to collect some field background information so we could explain our data, but this year we're going to actually use our collector app to get sample site photos upstream, downstream, right bank, left bank, and we're going to start doing that every year so we can make comparisons. And that visual data is going to be really useful to us as we analyze data. We're adding a new page to our website actually for the volunteers, so we're going to put specific information on there, including this presentation and some training forms and other information that'll be useful to volunteers. And lastly, we've been invited to work with MSD and MPI this summer to collect water chemistry samples. We're going to collect 6 sets of samples at 14 locations, and by doing that, it'll free up some money to do more macro and fish samplings in the Mill Creek, and that data will be very, very useful. So lots of exciting things going on. Next slide. What do our data mean? I want to talk to you about something that's really cool that Mike Miller developed, and he's going to go into it in a lot more detail, but you got it as a handout when I sent out the follow-up information, and if you didn't get it, let me know. Next slide. We could show it to you. But the ranking system basically is a system Mike developed, and this was a way that we could actually rank each stream, and then we could compare apples to apples from year to year. And so every single one of our parameter gets measured, and then we average all of them and actually give a numerical value to each one of the stream sites that we monitor, which is super cool. Next slide. This is a copy of the water quality ranking system. Mike will go into it in a lot more detail, but you can see the 8 parameters on the left, and then if you look at the top, you'll see that they're divided into different ranges. Excellent, good, enriched, fair, and poor. And what we do is each one of these is ranked 1 through 5, with 5 being the best. And we actually rank each parameter, and he's going to talk about that. And we've even got some information that I sent you that Mike's going to refer to about our top 10 list of the best and worst sites. And all of that's based on our rankings. So that's another cool thing that we have going on here at the Mill Creek. So we're really proud of that. So with that, I'm going to let Mike talk about what our actual site information that we collected means. He's going to start with the main stem. So let Mike take it.
Thank you, Ann. Well, welcome all. Next slide. We have a variety of tributaries on the Mill Creek and the main stem that you can see here. Many of our tributaries are underground and out of sight. But what we've done is monitor usually the mouth of the tribs, as well as a dozen sites on the main stem. Next slide. We have our parameters divided in 2 categories. The strength of these is that we can measure eutrophication with nitrogen and phosphorus as our eutrophication drivers that produce chlorophyll, our in vivo chlorophyll. The in vivo chlorophyll also adds to the turbidity of the river at low flow, not at high flow, if I could go back one. And the growth of the algae increased the pH. Now the pH we measure is in the morning, not in the afternoon, so this is a minimal derivation. This is not a true pH of the river. It is not an approved pH measurement, but it does show the patterns that we want to see. The other thing we monitor is sewage effluent, because we have conductivity. Conductivity is salts, and NaCl goes right through sewage plants with no reduction, essentially. So treated or untreated conductivity is a measure of effluent over ranges of about 550 microsiemens caused by equilibrium with calcium carbonate. The E. coli or human fecal bacteria, obviously an indicator of other anthropoid diseases that you might catch through ingestion of the water. The high nitrogen and phosphorus, it's elevated above natural levels. It can also indicate sewage. They do mineralize organic matter to N and P. and the optical whiteners from failing septic systems. These are usually readily treated, but can go as an indicator of raw sewage getting into the stream. Next slide. Here's a little model of what happens. Go ahead to hit the carriage you turn. We have 14 or 15 nitrogen hit again, and 1 phosphorus and about 100 carbon next. And these cause the algae to grow. They make ATP and DNA, both of which contain mass. Hit the button. Use mass amounts of phosphorus. They keep hit it again. While they're growing in biomass, it produces enough biomass that overnight they likely divide. Next, hit it again. Just keep hitting and as you can see, they divide into 2 and they grow and they all produce oxygen. And by going after bicarbonate, they take a CO2 out of bicarbonate, leaving an OH, which drives the pH up. And if you do the math, next slide, next punch, shows that about 1 part of phosphorus makes 2,500 times that in algal biomass. Phosphorus is clearly the rate limiting driver for photosynthesis and algal biomass in water. Down at the bottom, you can go through it as a sewage plant. Sewage plants usually treat the E. coli except between November and April, when they no longer are required to use UV or chlorine. The E. coli is an indicator of aberrant E. coli, Cryptosporidium, Giardia, other things that can make you ill. The values, go ahead and hit the next slide, is keep the geomeans of E. coli to under 126 to make it swimmable, and under 1030 to make it canoeable. This year was a semi-rainy year. We had two big rainfall events in the spring, one there March 20th, the other one on May 19th. And these were huge drivers that really did erode the river. You'll notice we had a series in August, but they didn't drive the discharge up much. Evapotranspiration in the summer limits the amount of runoff. You notice we had 52.4 inches. Our rainfall's gone up from the historic values, long-term values in the 40s and 50s of 38 inches. So it's really gone up a lot. Next slide. Here's the discharge pattern in the Mill Creek. We got one high flow in March, and the rest of our flows, you notice, are down there between 10 and 20 cubic feet per second. They're incredibly low. The white circles show the total flow for the previous 4 days. But what's most interesting is this comparison of Evendale and Carthage. Carthage is the downstream site where water flow is measured. Evendale is just below the Union Center Boulevard and the GE facility. And the area above of Evendale is about 51% of the area at Carthage. And yet it produces a much greater percentage of the runoff. At low flow, the runoff at Evendale is only 58% of that at Carthage, almost the same as the unit area. But at high flow events, it's over 75% of the flow measured at Carthage. That is, the impervious surface at Carthage, at Evendale and above, is giving a disproportionate amount of the water to the lower river. Next slide. The conductivity of the rivers to measure the total salts. The upstream is on the right, mile 25, and the Ohio River is on the left at mile 0. All of them will follow this. Conductivity is measured in microsiemens. That value at 500 at the Ohio River is about the equilibrium of bicarbonate and water in air. And that's where it should be if we didn't have additional salts. You notice that upstream we're at about 700. 700 is the level at which we are using as an index above which we get reduction in some of the darters. And the reduction in darter numbers or species brings the IBI or the fish index values, the OEPAs, down quite dramatically. But you can see there at mile 18 that the value goes up quite dramatically as the Upper Mill Creek Water Reclamation Facility puts in its effluent, which the salts go right through it untreated, and they're diluted slowly as you go downriver, but remain well over 1,000. You notice the average is 909. Next slide. The pH of the river would be the responding variable if there were nutrients, and pHs above 8.3 are obviously driven by the hydroxyl ions made from photosynthesis. Normal pHs run from about 7.5 to 8.1 in the bicarbonate system, and you can see for most of the stream, the values are under 8 and not elevated at all. The little circles are the monthly values. The big dark circle is the annual mean. Next slide. Turbidity could be a measure of algal biomass, but in this case, up there above mile 20, which is above the Upper Mill Creek Water Reclamation Facility and in the Union Center Boulevard area, there must be still some construction going on because we had a high turbidity reading. And you'll notice that the single high values way up at the top, there's a value above our optimum of 20. And this was caused by the high discharge in March, our one high discharge month. It wasn't high, it was under 300 cubic feet per second. Next slide. Total phosphorus is our indicator of eutrophication, and it usually comes from effluent. Again, notice the upper river, mile 25, down to the juncture with the East Fork of the Mill Creek, where the Upper Mill Creek Water Reclamation Facility puts in their effluent. The values are quite low, under the expected state target of 0.1 milligrams per liter, the dark arrow going across the line. But here you can see the values go up to as high as 0.4 and drop with dilution and uptake going downriver towards the Ohio River. Notice that the average was 0.14 milligram, and the median, though, was 0.07, which is below the 0.1 target value. This is the first time or the second time ever that we've seen this. The only other time was in 2014 when the Mill Creek plant was using tertiary treatment to remove phosphorus. Next slide. Nitrate is the second macronutrient. We need 10 times as much nitrogen as phosphorus. So the recommended level by the OEPA for large rivers is 1 milligram per liter, the bright line. You'll see the upriver stations on the right are lower than 1, and at below the effluent, they go back up. There's also a spike right down there below CSO 5 and Lick Run. Something happened down there on one date, or several dates, as you can see. Next slide. We can plot the median TP. This is a cumulative plot with the concentration on the bottom going from 0 to 0.6 milligram per liter, and the cumulative frequency going from the lowest values up to the highest values. And the median in the middle at the 50% horizontal line is the kind of what you'd expect when you went out on most dates. It's quite interesting that even though the arithmetic median was 0.07, the median plotted was 0.13, a little bit higher. But the intriguing thing is that all of the rivers this year, this is the Ohio River, the Great Miami River, the Whitewater River, and the tributaries of the Great Miami River, were all between 0.1 and 0.13. It's like all the rivers converged this year on an equilibrium value, maybe with an equilibrium with the sediments and the algae in the bottom of the river. Next slide. In vivo chlorophyll is our measure of algal biomass, and the OEPA would like to keep it less than 30 micrograms per liter. Above that value, the diel fluxes of oxygen in the daytime and reductions at night when they're respiring are sufficient to drive the O2 below 5 milligrams per liter, which becomes quite constraining for the species of fish that can live there. In this particular year, though, the chlorophyll levels were incredibly low, and less than 5. This is about the same as the Ohio River because of its turbidity. We're not quite sure why it's that low, except that the nutrients were also low. Next slide. The optical whiteners are normally non-existent, very low in the Mill Creek. This year, for some reason, somewhere in East Fork, below the Butler County Regional Water Reclamation Facility, we did run into some optical whiteners. They're readily treated by the plant. We've actually followed it through the plant to show that normally they come out of the plant at about 14, a reading of about 14 micrograms of PTSA equivalent per liter. This year you can see we had some up there at 40. So it looks like they either had some untreated bypass or something. I do not know what. Next slide. The E. coli in the river, seen here, as our indicator of human fecal pollution, 126 and below, and we can go swimming, up to 1,030 most probable numbers per 100 ml, and we can go non-contact recreation. And you'll notice that the river falls between swimming and the upper limit, or the upper limit for non-contact recreation. So it's safe for canoeing the whole year. Our geo-mean, as you can see, this is the average of the geo-means, was 955 most probable numbers, which is as low as we've ever seen it. Congratulations, MSD and Butler County Regional. Next. Total coliforms are not regulated. This is measured in our standard method. The numbers here range from 10 to almost 30,000 per 100 mLs. They sometimes come from soils. They also come from effluent, but the numbers have no value except in the next slide. In the next slide, I've noted this is just a matter of observation by me, but when the E. coli percentage of the total coliforms goes over 10%, it's indicative of human fecal pollution, regardless of the numbers. And you'll notice that we stayed under 10% except for 1 point down there at River Mile 3, somewhere in the CSO5 area. But it indicates that we had no raw sewage coming into the system. Next slide. The water quality ranks that Ann was talking about, we rank each value on a scale of 1 to 5, with 3.5 being the dividing line between acceptable and unacceptable, as a recommendation for surface waters that will support warm water habitat for fish and macroinvertebrates. And so that's a value of about 3.5, which is the black line that's going across this graph. Values above that mean that the water quality, based on our 8 parameters on all dates, is better than that number. And if it goes above 4, I'm calling it exceptional. And the state has an exceptional warm water habitat, a warm water habitat, and then limited and modified below that. But it would indicate this year for the all but 2 stations were in what I would call a warm water habitat. And it's intriguing to note that the upper stations above River Mile 18 are all in the exceptional category. Now this is Mason and Union Center Boulevard. This area was developed in the 1990s using best available technology at the time, which meant retention, detention pond, gutterless road margins, and about a 30-year growth of trees. And the combination of that level of technology has provided water quality coming off of that newish area as really extraordinary. It has been the best water in the system for the past 4 years, but it's been in the green. This year it's in the blue. So we're really excited about that. down by the Ohio River influences it, and it's normally a 4 normally. So let's go on to the next slide. The Mill Creek tributaries can either contribute or dilute the problems in the Mill Creek. Which they do. Let's take a look at it quickly. Next slide shows the conductivity. The 700 line, the line above which we might see some impairment, is exceeded by a large number of streams. West Fork Creek down at River Mile 3.5, the West Fork of the Mill Creek, particularly above Winton Lake, and some of the sites on the East Fork of the Mill Creek below the treatment plant. But by and large, this shows that there is some possibility that the conductivity is elevated by some of the tribs. Next slide is turbidity. Turbidity we expect to be under 20, and for every stream site it was. The streams are not now the erosion centers at low flow in this very dry year. The highest one is this Gorman Heritage Farm, and this is going to pop up on several more of these tributary problems in just a minute. Next slide is the pH, and we have one site of the West Fork Mill Creek that's up around 8.9, which is incredibly high. I don't know what site that is. That could be a cement leachate or a cement truck flushing that was done somewhere in that area, because it's hard even with photosynthesis to get that high. All the rest of the creeks are very near or below the magical 8.3 as an indicator of a stressor pH. Next slide. The mean TP of the tribs, total phosphorus of the tribs, is higher in places, particularly on the East Fork up there above mile 18. You can see there's a trib to the Mill Creek on Reading Road. There's a town run on Canal Road. There's the park, Twin Creeks Park on the East Fork, and the East Fork sites that are all high. These are elevated, 2 of them I don't know why, 1 we do. Also, this Ludlow Run Buttercup in Preserve here in Northside was a little elevated on a couple of parameters this year. We'll have to look into that. Next slide. The nitrate above 1 is an enrichment. Remember, the river was very close to 1, but you see Town Run and the trib at Gorman Heritage Farm, they do have some livestock up there and some agricultural projects. It's interesting that we don't quite know what that is, but we do have a project in the Mill Creek Alliance to examine this next year. So we'll be on top of that. So here is a case where a few of the tributaries, particularly the ones on the East Fork of the Mill Creek, below the Upper Mill Creek Water Reclamation Facility, could be a problem. Next slide. The geomean of total coliforms going from 10 to 30,000, particularly high in Gorman Heritage Farm again, and the Ludlow Run Buttercup Preserve, and a site on the West Fork Creek. These could be ones that are been impacted by animal waste. Next slide is the E. coli, and the E. coli for the tribs is higher than the 1,030, only on the East Fork and on an unknown trib, 2 small components and 1 expected, so that the geomean of the tribs is not a major contributor to the river. The river wasn't a problem this year either. Next slide. The percent E. coli shows that an unknown trib, Amberley Creek, East Fork sites, and Beaver Run, all highly urban sites, are high and potentially getting some human fecal waste, but that's just a suggestion. Next slide. The water quality ranks of the tributaries were all above 3.5. They were all in the warm water habitat or exceptional warm water habitat category. Congratulations, that's excellent. Next slide. What we have here are the 10 best and the 10 worst. Our index goes from up to 5, and those that are 4.5 to 5 are incredibly good waters. And the Cooper Creek, that is the target of Adam Lehman's urban stream restoration, you'll notice is for the second year in a row is in that high category. Unnamed tribs of the Mill Creek, the West Fork Creek from Oak Avenue, Union Center Boulevard to the Mill Creek. This is, of course, above the mile 18. Burnett Woods Lake, which doesn't count really as a trib. The East Fork of the Mill Creek and above Westchester Road, that's well above the sewage facility, and Amberley Creek. So we have a variety of good creeks, and those of you that are monitor those, keep them that way. Next slide are the worst. The worst aren't bad. The worst only go down to 3.5. They're all acceptable in what I would say is more or less equivalent to the warm water habitat water quality. Remember, water chemistry is only one of the 4 components that we need for a healthy creek. We need the biota, the fish. We need the macroinvertebrates. We need the habitat, which involves the riparian zone and coverage, and we need the water chemistry. We're only looking at one of the factors here, but the water chemistry is not limiting the development of biocriteria on the Mill Creek in 2020. Next slide. Here's a plot with longitude, latitude of the Mill Creek, with the upper Mill Creek at the top and the Ohio River at the bottom. And you can see green, blue, 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 a couple of yellow ones below the entry of the East Fork Creek into the Mill Creek. It then recovers and is green or blue to the rest of the way to the river. This is unbelievable. This is, I know Nancy Elwood is online, and she can probably remember in 1997 when we sat in those meetings down there and heard the dire circumstances from MSD of how they were not going to be able to reduce the E. coli and improve the water quality generally for fish and macroinvertebrates. And here we are sitting just 20 plus years later, and we're there. We have achieved a level that we would not have believed possible from those early meetings when Robin Carruthers made the first habitat watershed plan for the Mill Creek. Next slide. Just to show you how it's improved, this is the 2017 data. On the left is the Great Miami River watershed with the Whitewater River as coming off there. The Whitewater River is our cleanest river. It's all green and blue. The Great Miami has a few yellows on it in 17, but notice the Mill Creek in the middle. Yellow, red, yellow, 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 red, red, red. And then there's the upper Mill Creek in green. This is the improvement we've seen since 2017, or the impact of low flow. We can't dismiss the impact of the low flow. The low flow eliminated almost all non-point source. All we had was point source, and we have very well treated effluent coming into the stream for the most part. And the non-point was non-existent. It was either COVID and the slow, well, that's the next slide, I think. Go ahead to the next slide. Is our summary. Rainfall was well above average. It was this 2 big spring units, and our summer was remarkably dry, although we had 5 inches of rain in October. But it didn't lead to runoff. The evapotranspiration from the greening of our urban area is mitigating the runoff from high rainfall events in the summertime, but not in the winter. Then the impervious surface, as I say, can, particularly from the upper reaches, can charge the lower river. Discharge of large events was dominated from impervious surfaces above Evendale. As I said, 75% of the flow in the high flow event measured at Carthage came from above Evendale. The total phosphorus, the critical algal nutrient, average 0.14, and but it reached 0.9 milligrams one day below the outfall. Nitrate averaged 1.2. Remember, the goal is 0.1 and 1 for those two elements. We're very close to that. Conductivity was measured at about 1,864 microsiemens in the effluent from the Upper Mill Creek Water Reclamation Facility. This is mostly sodium chloride. This is a source problem. We've got to look at the sources of sodium chloride and reduce it. Now, there are other things in there besides sodium chloride, but it has to be a univalent cation anion to get through the sewage plant. The Mill Creek averaged 909, which is well above the background level of 550, and our upper limit of the OEPA would like at 700. The algal biomass stayed under 6 micrograms per liter. Could be that our riparian zone is also improving. The most recent 2017 data from MBI show improvements in the QHEI for the Mill Creek. Next slide. E. coli levels were within the range of canoeable and kayaking on all dates this year. Now, that's not going to be true in a high flow date when some of the CSOs open up, but they open up very infrequently these days. And the old adage is, if the water is muddy, do not go out. It will have high E. coli. Once the water is clean, clear, or green, it is safe to canoe. The water quality rankings 1 to 5 were uniformly high this year. The average of the main stem station was almost 4. This is the best ever for the Mill Creek. Let's give ourselves a hand. This is amazing. Mill Creek looks like it's improved to the best ever. Is it COVID-19 reducing lawn fertilization and no non-point? Did the closures or reduced plant operations lower the discharges of many industries? Was the improvement caused by MSD's recent reductions in pipe leakage? Likely the answer to all of these is yes, but the result was an astounding victory for the Mill Creek. And I'm going to end it there, I think.
I am ending share. Let's see.
You want to go to the last one?
I think we're ready to take questions if you've got them. And
I've got one, Mike, from the chat. Notes that Ludlow Run has 6 CSOs emptying into it, and they want to know if you think that would affect coliform or other indicators.
yeah, yes, Ludlow Run could easily be impacted by those or by leakage around those old pipes. We have many of the old sewer pipes that leak, and they get into the drainage water as well, even when the CSOs don't overflow. Every CSO overflow is monitored by MSD now, and they put out a report about the volume that comes out of each one of them. Now, they should not have been open during any of the points that we were there. If you do see a CSO that has water coming out of it, when it hasn't rained for 3 or 4 days, it ought to be reported, because it means that somebody else is dumping something into it, or it has a leakage problem.
Mike, next question from Ken Petrin. Is there anything that can be done to limit the big negative impact of the water reclamation facility?
The water reclamation facility is a big impact because it's going into such a small stream. It's an incredibly good facility. It used to use tertiary treatment on phosphorus and precipitate it with an iron compound, and they got their phosphorus levels down to the lowest we've seen. I should note that these phosphorus levels in the Mill Creek are lower than the Little Miami River, lower than the Ohio River, and lower than the Great Miami River this year. And now they're all low, but that's a real boon for the Mill Creek. The plant is, of course, an aggravation. The Little Miami has 11 plants in our reach, and the Great Miami has got dozens of plants upriver of Hamilton. And so these are heavily sewage impacted systems, and we just happen to have that one acute source. And the biggest thing that we're going to have to do with that plant is try and find out what the source of that high conductivity is coming into it. There's a manufacturer or somebody who's using more salt in production than they probably would have to. And if they could reduce that, it would have a major impact on the downstream biocriteria.
Allison asked if we will be sharing the slides, and yes, we will certainly do that.
Yeah, they'll be on the web.
We'll put them on our website, or if you would like to send an email to either Ann or myself, we will share them. Next question from Mike and Ann. Why are there high levels of multiple parameters at Gorman Pond?
Aha! We're not sure. I have personally not been up to Gorman Farms, but you know, farming practices with livestock and with fertilization on a hill slope could be problematic. We don't have any other agricultural lands, and I'm just not. They do experimental work up there, and we must contact and work with Gorman Farms, and I think we're going to do that this coming year in a project that Bennett has.
Yeah, from a distance, I'll answer and say that we are working with Adam Lehman from Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation District, as well as Gorman Farms, and we are developing a Section 319 grant application to address this issue and keep their animal waste runoff from getting into the stream.
One suspects that is an incredibly small stream, and although it has high concentrations, its impact is minimal.
Okay. Next question from Gary Robbins. What can homeowners do to help?
Homeowners, stop fertilizing with phosphorus. Lawn fertilizers are not supposed to be using phosphorus in their mix in Cincinnati. It's nitrogen only. Most soils are extraordinarily rich with phosphorus and don't need additional P, just N. If you're going to fertilize with organic material that's spread out equally and worked in as the mulch. Much better to let your grass grow high and mulch it on site and leave the mulch on the lawn. Cut it high, 3 to 4 inches, not at 1 inch. The mulch will disappear and it will hold water and it will impede the runoff. This is one of the best practices you could put into service on your yard. Also, if you have a low spot, plant some very evapotranspirative bushes, shrubs, or trees in that back area to lift that extra moisture into the air so it doesn't run off.
Our next question is, with greater rainfall and a varying climate, are goals for water quality changing to adapt to the new conditions?
The goals aren't, but this problem came up today with agricultural non-point source pollution, because with more runoff, you lose more nitrogen and you might lose more soil particles. Phosphorus moves with soil particles, nitrogen moves with water. And they're anticipating that since we're getting more rain, this in the last decade, in this last year, the 5 dams above Dayton to reduce the flow in the Miami River were filled 9 times. This is unprecedented for one season. And there's a new plot by Mike Eckert on the Miami Conservancy District showing the increase in rainfall and the increase in the use of those dams and the discharge pattern for the Great Miami River. And it's coming up, and we expect it's going to export more nutrients, not less.
Thanks, Mike. Our next question is, can you please explain again your comparison of E. coli to coliforms and the graphs that you showed?
Oh, well, the E. coli are the ones that the OEPA follows. It's hard to determine how safe water is. What the EPA does is look at the concentrations of of bacteria and protozoans and so forth that you drink. However, when you're in water, you can get it through cuts in your skin, through your eyes, and through your ears. I've gotten severe ear infections from bacteria, but those are not evaluated. Anyway, the E. coli is the bad boys, and the coliforms are the total of which the E. coli are a member of that class of bugs, but they are not necessarily, they're not virulent. They're normal in soils, and they're normal in waste from geese and dogs and other, as well as humans. I just have noted over the past years that if the E. coli is a high percentage of the total coliforms, it's over 10%. It sometimes indicates, or is a second indicator of recent human pollution, because we expect to find more E. coli than coliforms in your feces. About 6% of your gut is made up of E. coli volume.
Our next question is, can you give us a preview of how the biological communities might respond to these encouraging water quality trends?
They are. Yes, we take the buff United Fly Fishermen down the Mill Creek, and we have a couple of advocates that fish the Mill Creek. And what we've noticed is twofold. The water quality has improved, and in 2017, every site on the Mill Creek met the warm water or modified warm water habitat criteria for macroinvertebrates, every site. That says the water quality is sufficient to harbor those organisms. The problem is there's no substrate for them. It's all sand and silt and cement. There's no rock. There's no cobble. And it says the dilemma is always getting them there. What we've been doing in the Mill Creek Alliance is eliminating low-head dams by mitigating them with 20-to-1 rock riffles that allow the fish to go up one rock at a time. And they are. 3 years ago now was our first year of noticing it. Our Buff United Fly Fishermen caught 14 striped bass in September of 14 inches. I mean, we're talking big, good to eat bass. They came out of the Ohio River. They're migrating up there to breed. The lower river below CSO 5, and the lower river below Clifton Avenue is now a nursery area for the fish that big fish want to eat, and also all of the fish-eating birds. So the great blue herons, the night herons, the black crowned night herons, the egrets, and even the osprey we see, all of these are fish-eating birds, and they love the lower section of the river. Some of the highest densities you'll see anywhere in the state are in the lower part of the urban Mill Creek because of that nursery area for those small fish. So we're seeing the fish move upriver because of the elimination of the dams into the good habitat. And I have to say, good habitat, they're not everywhere, but those fly fishermen know how to find that good habitat, and they're darn good at it.
Next question is that the Route 50 bridge site was high in one metric E. coli. Any thoughts as to why?
Route 50 bridge site.
The 50 bridge site.
That's down near the Ohio River.
Yeah.
That's River.
Yes. Not really. What we find is there's an incubation in the mouth of that river. What happens at the mouth of the Mill Creek is that nutrients come down, and it is open so the light can get to it, and we get some very high values. When we had the HAB, harmful algal bloom of Microcystis aeruginosa in 2014, the highest microcystin values ever found in the Ohio River were in the mouth of the Mill Creek, something like 297 micrograms per liter. It was toxic soup. And it's just because it's a dead water. Having worked on the mouths of all of the rivers on the Ohio River, I can state generally that the mouths of rivers, those estuaries, are incredibly rich with algae relative to the river and relative to the upriver sites, because we have done that experiment. And so this is just kind of an artifact of those estuarine sites. In fact, the Ohio EPA doesn't like estuaries because they don't have an index for it. They do not rank it because of the fact that all of those breeding forage fish are in there, and all the herons and the migratory predators coming into it. They want to see the stream fish, little darters that aren't going to live in slow water at the mouth of the river. So they don't have an index for that estuary. And it's a complex habitat, but it's very critical for both the river and for the stream.
Next question was, why do you believe there may have been a large impact from trans-evaporation this year?
Oh, well, we've seen that before. I've actually done the plot. 1 inch of rain in the non-vegetative season is a 4-foot rise of the Mill Creek. It's pretty incredible, and it rises instantaneously, and as soon as the rain stops, it goes down. It is immensely flashy, and this flashiness. What was the question?
Why the impact from trans-evaporation?
Oh, yes. But in the summertime, we just don't see those rises in the creek relative to the rainfall. So the rise of the Mill Creek is nowhere near 4 feet in the summer from a 1 inch rain. A 1 inch rain would not even cause the river to come up in many instances. Because the cement is hot, it hits it, and 1 inch can evaporate quickly. And the vegetation, the water that connects to the leaves can be about 25% of an inch of rain. It's held on the leaves and evaporates from them. We get some stem flow that comes down the bark. Some of it drips through, but the result is that very little comes down to run off until you get extended rainfalls in the summertime. Now, we are getting some big rainfall events. As I say, we had 5 inches in October, and that's well above the kind of 2.5 to 3.5 that we normally get.
That was the last question that we had in the chat. If anyone would care to have another question, they can either put it in the chat, or I have allowed you to now unmute yourselves and you can ask the question yourself. Another question in the chat, Mike. Can you talk more about what you think could be happening down at CSO5 by Lick Run?
Well, yes. Lick Run is where we've daylighted 3 streams. We've daylighted Lick Run. We've daylighted Upper Lick Run, about a mile of that. We've daylighted what I call Quebec Run. These are real tributes to MSD's fortitude. We've taken the combined CSO and divided it into a stream and a sewer. A sewage line goes on to CSO5 and a reduced flow, but the rainfall goes into a stream, which is going into the now open Lick Run. And we're going to see what we will call tertiary treatment occur in Lick Run as that water comes down off the landscape and goes into the river. Gwen Marshall and her team is going to be monitoring those sites this year, and we're going to be very excited to see what happens. The water at the upper end of Lick Run is black in color, and the water at the lower end of Lick Run is green in color, and the rocks are stringy with green algae. The oxidative goal of the stream is doing wonderfully, and so we expect Lick Run to have very good water in it, and it also has a lake at the bottom, and that lake takes out anywhere between 70 and 85% of all the phosphorus by settling to the bottom. So we anticipate that the Lick Run project will be incredibly beneficial to that lower section of river. The CSO5 has a huge storage capacity, a 19-foot pipe, and a big storage unit at the end, and we don't think that's going to be overflowing very often.
Mike, thank you for your in-depth analysis and your enthusiastic presentation. Great job.
Thanks. One last question here in our chat. MSD has a lot more consent decree work ahead of them. What additional gains may we see from this great deal of additional work that's coming down the road?
Well, I think most of the really big projects are done. SSO 700 has had 2 step-ups in it, and that was the largest sanitary sewer overflow, and it's supposed to go down to only 4 times a year, and most of the CSOs are supposed to open only 4 times a year now, instead of with every 1/10 or 2/10 of an inch of rain. And so as we get closure on a lot of those little projects, we're going to see the MSD has had some remarkable success with their end-of-pipe work, big balloons that they've put in Bloody Run and some of the other combined sewer overflow pipes that fill the pipes upstream and do not let water out until the pipe is completely full. These kind of storage applications, we're going to see more of that. And many of the leaking sewer pipes in low water areas are being lined now with a plastic liner that can be put in situ and keeps the pipes watertight so they don't lose or gain water during rains or in low-lying areas. So the sewage should not overflow the pipes as often because of this pipe repair.
That is currently the last question we have in the chat. Anybody else want to?
Yeah.
I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to tell you guys about Lick Run. I was down there today, and because the barrier dam is closed and the Ohio River's at the 56 feet, of course the Milk Creek is lower at about the 50 or whatever at the lower part. But it was interesting to see how this new Lick Run project goes into the Mill Creek. The CSO5 tank was full, well, around it was full within like about 2 feet at the top. So then you go down to the exit and you see that arch is like, wow, you can't see the arch. So then you go over to the other side and you're thinking, oh my goodness, is the Mill Creek coming up into the Lick Run? And you could see it was perfectly designed to do that it wouldn't do that. So you see the tiny little waterfall coming out of the pond going into the pipe. And it was interesting to see how the elevation was sorted out and all that. Also, Chris Carr's on this call, and he was thinking about canoeing there. They have got the most massive decorative grate on the upper end to keep the kids from ending up in there and drowning. So anyway, it was just really interesting, and you've only got about another day to run down and look at that before the water level starts dropping, because they're going to open the dam in another day or two. It's
I called the Lick Run a stream daylighting. It's really not a stream daylighting because they kept it from having a natural entry into the Mill Creek. No fish can go from the Mill Creek into Lick Run. Therefore, it is, as they say, is a water feature. It is not a daylighted stream. It will, however, as a water feature, act as a tertiary treatment system for water that comes into it.
I think little fish could have gotten in today.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone else? Well, hearing none.
Dave, I got a question. A while back, I saw a cool drone video of the Lick Run MSD project there. Mm-hmm. That was just so cool. Is that going to be on the website? And is there going to be an update to it as well?
Oh yeah, the drone flyovers are monthly, and they're on the MSD website, and you can watch them anytime you want to. Yes, I think you can go back and look at some of the earlier ones. But yes, those drone flyovers do show the project. Gary, go invest in the property. What we hope it is an economic driver for Fremont, and we need investors.
Will the drone flights be done for all the tributaries or just the Lick Run?
No, it's just the Lick Run project. because of its size and its complexity and what it's doing to traffic flows occasionally.
You
Gary,
Google,
you
if you
should
go
go
to
down and
YouTube,
see it.
Gary, and look at MSD Lick Run, you'll see many of the videos are posted on their YouTube site.
You should just go down and see it in person. There's an 18-car parking lot for the lower part off of Queen City. I think that it, or is it Queen City?
Yes, Queen
And then
City.
there's the 9-car parking lot a little further up, and very nice walking around it, and it's a very enjoyable little walk. You should go check it out.
Okay, well, I guess I'm going to thank everybody, and we're going to sign off from the Mill Creek Alliance office. I want to thank you all for attending, and I hope you learned a little something, but take some pride in what we're all doing because we're making a difference, and that is a huge difference. The Alliance is amazing. You know, this year we turned in 2 major sewer leaks to MSD where their interceptor broke and took in stream water for I don't know how long during the floods last winter. So you know we're cooperatives with them, and we hope to keep to see it improving.
I would just like to jump in very quickly, say thank you to everyone for attending tonight. Thank you so much for all that you do for Mill Creek Alliance, all of the passion and energy you give to us and to our programs. We are very excited about the state of Mill Creek and where it's going in the next few years. We really think that the momentum is with us, and there are going to be some spectacular things happening over the next couple of years. Would like to point out that if you visit our web page and our events page and calendar, you'll see that we have a lot of upcoming events that you are welcome to join in with. Most notably, this coming Saturday, we have an event at Solway Park where we're going to do our best to murder a bunch of invasive species, including the bush honeysuckle. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, if you would gather at Solway, or you can send us a message and we'll send you some more details, but we would love to see you on Saturday. Again, thank you so much to everyone. One last thing Mike wants to jump in and say, and then we'll wrap it up.
I just wanted to invite you Friday morning, 9:30 to 11. I'll be talking to the old Green Umbrella Watershed group about all the streams in Hamilton County in 2020. And next Tuesday evening at 7:30, I'll be talking to the Oxbow Inc. on a Zoom about the Mill Creek Yacht Club and all it does, a comical look at it. So 2 more events coming up.
Comical look.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to wrap it up. We truly appreciate everything. You all have a good evening.
Good show.
Thank you.